Hello and welcome to Catholic Answers Live. I'm Cy Kellett, your host. Carlo Broussard with us for both hours, and we're going to have some fun because it's always fun when we do the whys of Catholic belief with Carlo. Why does the Catholic Church teach that? Maybe there's a moral thing that the Catholic Church teaches. You don't like what the Catholic Church teaches about money or about war or about any of the sexual issues. If you want to know why does the Church teach that? I said you don't like, but it might just be a curiosity. Why do we teach that? Maybe it's a doctrinal thing that you've got an interest in. Why does the Church teach that God is three persons in one God? Why do we teach that Jesus is God? Any other of the doctrinal side? You just call 888-318-7884, and I'll hand you off to Carlo, and he'll answer your question. Why? Why do you Catholics believe this or that? Carlo Broussard is an apologist here at Catholic Answers, the author of a whole bunch of books, which I have here in my Carlo stack. Meeting the Protestant Challenge is one of them. The first one was called Prepare the Way, and the most recent one is Purgatory is for Real. Good news about the afterlife for those who aren't perfect yet. Welcome, Carlo.
Well, thanks, Cy, for having me. Not quite a whole bunch yet, but we're working on it.
Well, my stack here's my stack, Carlo, right next to yours. There are no books in it. So that looks like a whole bunch to me.
Contraire, it's just not in hand yet.
Not in hand yet, right? Yeah. Coming out. They said April 30th.
Okay.
I thought. But they say it like this, though. We'd like to have your book out on April 30th. Here's 10,000 corrections to make. I'm like, well, I don't know if these two things go together. So I hope it'll be out on April 30th. So, Carlo, the whys of Catholic belief, I mean, what's our obligation to explain why? Why not just say, well, because God said so?
Well, I think out of love, if it's an honest inquirer who's seeking to know reality, to know the truth, to know what is real and what God has revealed to us, then out of love, we ought to share the good of truth. Truth is a good for us as human beings. We're made to know it. And as Jesus has taught us in John 8:32, the truth will make us free. In other words, it will complete us as human beings, making us happy. So I think out of love, we need to provide answers to the why questions concerning what we believe. But also, too, I think there's precedent for it in sacred scripture itself. St. Peter, inspired by the Holy Spirit, our first pope, as we would say as Catholics, instructing us in 1 Peter 3:15, always be ready to give an apologian, an answer, a defense, an explanation to anyone that asks you a reason for the hope that is within you.
Yeah. Okay.
So whenever the question why is asked, the inquirer is asking for a reason, right? A basis for your belief, what's, the premises that are leading to your conclusions. And so we need to be able to articulate those premises, justify those premises, and show that the conclusion follows from them, and that, therefore, the conclusion is true if the premises are true. That's basically what's going on here, because, like, all men are mortal, Socrates is a man, therefore Socrates is mortal. So why do you believe Socrates is mortal? Oh, because he's a man, right? Well, what's the significance about him being a man that makes him mortal? Well, all men are mortal, type of thing.
Yeah.
And so we can apply that sort of logic, right, to our conversations with friends concerning our Catholic beliefs. So why do you believe X, Y, and Z? Because of A, B, and C.
Yeah.
That rhyme.
The letters always rhyme, Carlo. 888-318-7884 is our number. 888-318-7884. If there's something that we Catholics believe and you want to know why, today's the day. You got 2 hours. Whether you're Catholic or not, by the way. As a matter of fact, we love it when people just want, if maybe you're a Muslim or Hindu or Buddhist or a nothing, or you're not. No one's a nothing, but I mean religiously unaffiliated, I should say. If you got a question about why do Catholics believe that? Why do Catholics hold that? 888-318-7884. 888-318-7884. Already calls coming in. Do you feel like going straight to the phone lines? Or
well, I know one thing. Weren't we supposed to announce something?
Wait, I should have had a reminder here in the studio.
Yeah, that would have been helpful, like maybe perhaps balloons and
maybe streamers.
Streamers, thank you for that word. I couldn't think of it.
Yeah, and the party hats.
Yeah, I
and
know.
Then
see, like we got this party hat here.
This thing. Yeah. Why? Look at Carlo. If Carlo puts a party hat on, I got to put a party hat on.
So for my wife out there, she would be very proud of me for wearing this
party hat,
goofy dorky looking party hat.
Oh, I thought they looked cool. Oh, all right.
So I have it on for the record, but I will shortly take it off. Hey, does John Versillo give you permission to wear that?
Oh, no, I don't know. Mary Versillo's not here, so she won't tell him. John Versillo is our video director, by the way, who is my nemesis here because he makes me wear collared shirts, and I want to wear sweatshirts when I'm doing the show. All right, so let me tell you what we're talking about the balloons, the streamers, the whatever that is. Does anyone know what that thing is? It's a decoration. We'll just call it a decoration. Something from Dr. Seuss or something. I don't know what it is. And it says behind me, 10K in giant balloons. 10K. That means 10K, which 10,000. You know what today is, Nick? You know what it is? You know what it is? What's this show? Go ahead. You say it, Nick. Oh, I got to say it. The 10,000th episode of Catholic Answers Live.
Woohoo!
This hour right now is the 10,000th episode. And I got so into talking with Carlo, I completely forgot to say it, even though I'm surrounded
quite delighted that you would be interested in conversation with me to such a degree that you would forget about this momentous occasion.
I know.
And how grateful am I to be a part of it. The 10,000th episode.
You are the man for the 10,000th episode.
I wonder, I was thinking about this before the show. I would bet there's at least one person out there who could probably say, I've listened to all 10,000 episodes of Catholic Answers Live.
Do you think there is that person out there?
I would bet there is. And if there is, should we extend an invitation for them to call us?
Oh, yeah. If you've listened to all 10,000, we definitely want to hear from you.
But it's got to be honest.
Yeah, you can. Right. I'm 4 years old and I've listened to all 10,000 episodes. No. I cannot even believe, Marie, you did a beautiful job decorating in
She
here,
sure
by the
did.
way. Yeah, it's great.
Very
So
festive.
Celebrating our 10,000th episode, Carla Broussard here with us. 10,000 means we've been doing this for how many years, Nick? 25, 26. I think maybe we're in 20. I don't know. But twice a day for a long time, 10,000 shows. I should have just worn a hoodie today. I don't think John would have kicked me out of the studio for wearing a hoodie today. Okay, now I can go to the phones, but I will continue to celebrate that throughout the day, the 10,000 episodes. I'll tell you what, I'm pretty sure that if the 10,000th episode had not fallen in Lent, there'd be a cake. And so I kind of wish we would have held off until the Easter season to celebrate it because there's no cake.
Well, we just do 2 celebrations.
How
about that?
Right, let's have the 10,000 cake. Marie, remember that.
That's the MO of
Easter
our boss.
week, when we come back, we'll have the cake for the 10,000th episode.
There you go. Our boss, Chris Check, is all about us having parties in the office. So
is he really? I didn't know.
Yeah, he's always like, let's find anything that we can celebrate.
Oh, yeah, he always
wants
us coming closer together. It's like his thing. What's that word he uses? He has a fancy word. What's the word? Do you guys remember the word? I'm going to think of it when we after we go to promiscuity. It's not proximity. It's we'll get to it. But let's go.
I'm lost on that one, brother.
Well, Chris always says propinquity. We need to have more propinquity. Thank you, Marie. Propinquity means that's Darren. Thank you, Darren. We need to have more propinquity. That means like togetherness.
Cool.
He says I
learned something new today.
You can't do Catholic ministry without propinquity.
I'm not going to try to say that word right now.
Say it in Pig Latin. Carlos, say it in Pig Latin. All right, we'll take a break. We are delighted to get to spend our 10,000th episode with you. If you have a question about why do Catholics believe something, 888-318-7884.
Call us now with your question. Hello? On Catholic Answers Live.
Hi, this is Cy. Catholic Answers Focus is our podcast, and it's meant to help you live, understand, and defend your Catholic faith. And it's fun because we get to drill down on one topic for each episode with someone who really knows their stuff. This week, for example, we have an episode with Chris Check on the Inquisition, and we have an entire episode dedicated to sharing the faith with people who just don't seem to care about God. You can get Focus wherever you get your podcasts. You can watch it on YouTube, or you can visit our website, CatholicAnswersFocus.com.
Are you a coffee drinker? If so, you can now enjoy a coffee roasted to perfection by the Carmelite monks of Wyoming. Delicious Mystic Monk coffee is roasted and prepared by monks in a hidden cloistered monastery and is available in over 25 varieties. All Mystic Monk coffees are works of perfection and labors of love. For more information on how to purchase Mystic Monk coffee, visit mysticmonkcoffee.com. That's mysticmonkcoffee.com.
Want the latest pro-life news? Want it delivered? Sign up. It's free. EWTN Pro-Life Weekly, your source for everything happening now in the fight to protect the sanctity of human life. New episodes delivered every week to your inbox. So if you really want to know,
sign up today.
Go to EWTN.com/pro-life today.
Welcome back to Catholic Answers Live, where all day I have been anticipating doing our 10,000th episode. There have been, I haven't done 10,000 episodes. I've only been here 4 years, but many fine hosts and apologists over the years, and lots of folks supporting us to make that possible, for which we are very grateful. We're, of course, particularly grateful to every single local station that airs us, and to all of the people at EWTN who actually make it possible. It's not possible that this would have happened or is happening now without EWTN. So thanks to everybody. It's exciting to be here on the 10,000th episode. Darren did some kind of math. He said if you watched all 10,000 episodes, you would have had to watch or listened to all 10,000 episodes. That's an entire year with no sleep of listening to Catholic Answers Live.
Wow.
So I'm guessing, I don't know if that person is out there. 888-318-7884 for our 10,000th episode. We're talking about the whys of Catholic belief. If you have a why question about Catholic belief, you are welcome to call. Carlo Broussard is our guest. And I think I'm going to Fort Perry, Canada. Is that where I'm going, Carlo?
Let's do it.
All right, let's go to Sean in Fort Perry, Canada, listening on the Amazon Alexa. Oh, you're not supposed to say Alexa, because then it turns on people's Alexa. Like if you go, Alexa, play Catholic Answers Live, then it plays Catholic Answers Live. Or Alexa, listen to EWTN, then it'll. So you're not supposed to say that on the radio. So I won't do that. Sean, thanks for your call. Go ahead with your question for Carlo.
Hello, Cy. Hello, Carlo.
Hi, Sean.
I do have a serious question, but I wanted to tell Carlo, and I've been waiting for him to come on, actually. Half the time when I pray to Blessed Carlo Acutis, I slip up and call him Blessed Carlo Broussard.
Well, we call this Carlo Blessed Carlo Broussard, too, around here. That's how holy he is.
I'm working on it, Sean. I'm working on it, brother.
Maybe it's a prophecy.
Hey, who knows,
right,
man?
Amen.
You know, if he writes enough of those wonderful books, I read the one on answering Protestant objections that are supposedly based on the Bible, and I'll just remind you, Cy, that I'm blind, so I got it off Amazon in a Kindle format, and then Alexa read it to me.
Awesome.
Oh, cool.
Well, thank you, Sean.
That's meeting the Protestant challenge.
I just like to say to anybody else who's out there listening who's blind, if you don't know, if you don't have an Alexa, get one, and then you can buy almost any of these wonderful Catholic Answers books, and in Kindle format, and Alexa will read them to you.
I should let people know Sean's last name is Bezos. He is Jeff Bezos' brother. But go ahead.
Yeah,
Sean.
right.
Sorry.
Now, here's my serious question.
All right, go.
I have not been able to understand. Every time I read the story about Christ's resurrection, why is it that in his glorified body, he still has all of his wounds?
Right.
And is he like that in heaven? And if so, does that mean that people like me that are disabled in some way, when we have our glorious bodies in heaven, will still be disabled?
Well, to answer the latter question, Sean, the answer is no. Anything that is imperfect within the body that ought not to be there, any sort of imperfection there or defection, right? Anything that the body is not supposed to be all of those defects will be taken care of in the glorified body. So that will be restored. Your sight will be restored back to you, brother, in the glorified body, and you'll be able to see with 20/20 vision. If there's such a thing, maybe it's a 40/40 vision or supervision or something in the glorified body. So
supervision is actually a word. Like that's when you supervise someone. Will there be supervision in heaven?
I'm making up a new word here, okay? All right?
Yeah,
I'm using
sorry.
it differently. Thank you for that, Si. Now, Sean, with regard to the question of why Jesus retained, the wounds in his hands that he told doubting Thomas, here, look, the wound in my side, the wound in my hands, touch and feel, in order that you may believe. St. Thomas Aquinas actually reflects upon this, drawing off of St. Bede in St. Bede's commentary on Luke. And you can read the reasons that St. Thomas Aquinas articulates, drawing off of St. Bede, in his Summa Theologiae, Part 3, Question 54, Article 4. Now, for your case, Sean, there's probably some way that you can get an audio version of the Summa Theologiae, perhaps somehow. I know there are certain apps out there that read articles off of the internet, so perhaps you can find one of those. But in the Summa Theologiae, Part 3, Question 54, Article 4, St. Thomas lists 5 reasons of why Christ kept these wounds even in his glorified body. And so, first of all, it's a trophy of his victory, he says. Secondly, it's to confirm the hearts of the disciples in faith, and we actually see that in the story in John chapter 20 with doubting Thomas, where he sees the wounds and he comes to believe. Third, St. Thomas points out so that when Christ pleads for us with the Father, as he intercedes for us in the heavenly sanctuary, according to Hebrews 7, always making intercession for us, he always shows the manner of death, Aquinas says, that he endured for us. So that's yet another purpose of the wounds in the glorified body. Fourthly, that he may convince those redeemed in his blood how mercifully they have been helped. So whenever we see Christ with our glorified bodies, with your restored eyes, Sean, and you see the marks of Jesus' crucifixion and those wounds that he retains in his glorified body, that will serve as an eternal reminder for the rest of our existence of the love he showed us in dying for us on the cross. And finally, Aquinas lists the 5th reason, so that on the day of judgment, he may upbraid them with their just condemnation. The holy wounds will silently sentence the damned to hell. And so there's a sense of manifesting justice, yet another reason why the wounds are kept in the glorified body, to show that those who reject the love that he showed us on the cross, they will be justly condemned. So once again, that's part 3 of the Summa Theologiae of St. Thomas Aquinas, question 54, article 4. Now granted, keep in mind, Sean, these are not reasons that the church is giving in a definitive way in a magisterial setting. This is within the realm of speculative theology, but nevertheless, there are good theological reasons for why the wounds of Christ would be retained. And then, of course, you have within dogmatic theology, speculation about martyrs and saints who die and who are persecuted, retaining some form of their wounds in order to be, like for Christ, a trophy of their victory, which God brought about through the grace that he gave them.
Okay, Sean, all makes sense?
I just hope that he doesn't experience pain when he's in heaven.
The answer to that is no. That is absolutely not, because all pain, all sorrow, all tears is wiped away according to sacred scripture in Revelation chapter 21. There is no more death, nor pain, nor sorrow. All of these wounds that remain present are preserved in the glorified body by divine power, and in no way will the individuals, and nor does Christ, suffer any kind of loss or anything, or suffer in any way.
Sean, thanks very much. Glad to hear from you again. And you sold a lot of Alexas, I think, with that call. Appreciate it. Let's go to Chrissy in Omaha, Nebraska, listening on Spirit Catholic Radio. Carla Broussard is our guest, and you get to ask any question you want about why Catholics believe this or that. Chrissy, go ahead with your why question for Carla. hang on, Chrissy. Guess who pushed the wrong button? I'm so excited about the 10,000th episode, I messed up. Chrissy, go ahead.
Thank you very much, Cy. I don't understand why it is that that the Catholics do during the Mass. Why do they kneel and then stand and sit?
Okay.
All right, Chrissy. Well, we are human beings, and God has created us not just as a spiritual being, like the angels who are pure spirits, but also as beings with bodies. So we are spiritual beings insofar as we have a rational soul, a spiritual soul, but we also have bodies. And because of that, Chrissy, God wills that we worship him in and through our body. And we see this all throughout Scripture, especially in the Old Testament, where there's a bunch of different things that God's people have to do to worship him, and the incense and the sacrifices and all those bodily things and aspects of worship. And the reason is because as human beings, we need to express visibly in and through our body with words and gestures in what we believe interiorly. And the movements of our heart and what we're thinking about. We express those things through our body. So whenever we stand in Mass, that signifies perhaps some parts of the Mass a readiness, like when we stand for the gospel. That's a sign that we are ready to take what Jesus is giving us and to go out on mission and to be evangelists and to spread the good news, right? Evangelion, or evangelium in Latin, and from that we get evangelists. When we sit during the Mass at the time of the reading of the epistles from the New Testament or the books of the Old Testament, that is a sign of being properly disposed and willing and ready to learn and to receive the information, sort of a lesson, right? In the extraordinary form, it's always referred to as the lesson whenever the epistles are read. I kind of like that. It's the lesson. We're learning, being instructed. And of course, Chrissy, whenever we kneel at Mass, that is a sign we are associating with that physical gesture, adoration and worship of Almighty God. And so the ultimate reason of why we're doing all of this bodily stuff is because we need to and we desire to worship God in and through our body.
Christy, I do hope that is helpful to you. Thank you very much for the call and for forgiving me for pushing the wrong button there. 888-318-7884 is our number. Carla Broussard is our guest, and our topic, both hours today, the whys of Catholic belief. If you have a why question about what we Catholics believe, whether it is doctrinal or moral, you are welcome to call 888-318-7884. Pat in Toms River, New Jersey, listening on EWTN Radio. You are up next. Pat, go ahead with your question for Carla.
Okay, this is Pat. I'm from Toms River, right?
I think you're from Toms River, but you're going to have to tell me. Are you from Toms River, Pat?
Yes, I am.
Okay, good.
So I want to make sure I'm the right Pat. All right. My question is, when we die, when we get to heaven, there'll be no pain, no sorrow, nothing. We're just going to be, okay. But my question is, why do we ask the saints to intercede for us? Because when we get to heaven, we will be saints. And I know, like with my family, if they're asking me, as when I'm in heaven, to help them, to intercede for them, how am I not going to, how am I going to just be blissful if I see them suffering and asking me to intercede?
Yes. This is, I tell you what, I'm excited that you asked this question, Pat, because St. Thomas Aquinas actually poses this question in the form of an objection in the supplement to his Summa Theologiae, one of his greatest works, in question 72, Article 1. And the reason why I'm so intrigued by this question, Pat, is because you are the first person to have asked this question that I discovered some time ago in St. Thomas's works that I'd never encountered before. So kudos to you, Pat, for such an insightful question, and it's a serious one. And so there are a few things we can say in response. Even though the saints know and are cognitively aware, there's the music for the hard break. So, Pat, please hold on, okay? We got a hard break here, and Sai's going to lead us out here. When we come back on the other side, I'll answer this great question that you've posed.
Pat in Toms River, thanks for your call. If you've got a question, you're welcome to call 888-318-7884. We'll finish up with Carlo's answer from Thomas Aquinas for Pat, but we'd love to answer any why question you have about the Catholic faith.
We're here for you. Call now. Catholic Answers Live.
If you spend any time on Twitter, Facebook, or mainstream media, you're probably familiar with the litany of slogans that skeptics employ to rescue you from the foolish belief that God exists. The constant onslaught seems to leave people with the idea that they have no alternative but to embrace atheism. How can a Christian respond? In One Less God Than You, John DeRosa breaks down 20 of the most common atheist challenges and shows you how to craft effective answers. Atheism is more aggressive and widespread than ever. Read One Less God Than You and prepare yourself to respond with the joyful truth that God is real. To get your copy of One Less God Than You, visit shop.catholic.com today or ask for it at a good Catholic bookstore near you.
Did you know you can access Catholic Answers Live right from your phone or other mobile device? Download the Catholic Answers Live app today. The Catholic Answers Live app, available now on iOS and Android.
To many people, even many Christians, purgatory is a fantasy, or worse, a wicked lie invented by the church to make salvation complicated and keep people in fear. But I'm here to tell you that purgatory is fact, not fiction. The Bible supports it, Christians have historically believed in it, and it makes theological sense. In my new book, Purgatory is for Real, I provide the evidence and reasoning to help you understand this controversial doctrine and demonstrate how it's actually a joyful, hopeful reality, not something shadowy and mysterious, but a sign of God's love and mercy. To get your copy of Purgatory is for Real, visit shop.catholic.com today or ask for it at a good Catholic bookstore near you.
Everyone has had their life turned upside down because of the pandemic.
We'll be discussing COVID 1 year later tomorrow on Take Two with Jerry and Debbie.
On most of these EWTN stations.
Now back to Catholic Answers Live.
That was nice to hear that little ad from Jerry and Debbie there on our 10,000th episode, because as we should probably mention, Jerry is the founder of the Catholic Answers Live radio show. He's the first host and has hosted probably, I don't know, maybe twice as many as anybody else has hosted of this program. And he's a great one, and you can hear him every day on Take Two with Jerry and Debbie on the EWTN Global Catholic Radio Network. As a matter of fact, I think you can hear him twice a day. That's how highly they think of him at EWTN. I think he's on twice. He and Debbie are on twice a day. I'm Cy Kellett, your host. On the line is Pat, probably in Toms River. She's pretty sure she's in Toms River. And the question had to do with, why do we pray to the saints? Wouldn't that make them sad? And they're supposed to be happy in heaven.
Yes. So, Pat, you're still with us?
I'm here.
Okay,
yes.
Fantastic. All right, so I was referring to a place in St. Thomas Aquinas' Summa Theologiae where he deals with this question, but you can, instead of going dig that out in the big work of St. Thomas, you can actually just go to Catholic.com, and I have an article that I wrote on this entitled, Aquinas, the Saints Can Hear Our Prayers. And so basically, to answer your question, the saints in heaven know that God, given the beatific vision, they know with perfect knowledge that God will bring about a greater good from the permitted evil. So it's based upon this common understanding that St. Thomas Aquinas articulates, getting it from Augustine, that God allows evils to happen in order to bring a greater good. God will only permit evil within this order of providence insofar as he intends to bring about a greater good. Given the beatific vision in heaven, the saints have perfect, clear knowledge that God will bring about a greater good. They may even know, perhaps, which good God will bring about from the permission of suffering that their loved ones here on earth are experiencing. And inasmuch as they have that perfect knowledge that God will bring about a greater good from his permission of the suffering in this life, and or possibly that they know what the good is that God will bring about, that is a source of joy and blissfulness for them, because they're seeing the suffering, Pat, from an entirely different perspective. They're seeing it from the eternal perspective. And that eternal perspective gives an appropriate context for viewing the suffering. And we get a hint of this, Pat, in sacred scripture, where St. Paul writes in Romans 8:18, I consider that the sufferings of this present time are not worth comparing with the glory that is to be revealed to us. And then in 2 Corinthians 4:17, he writes, for this slight momentary affliction is preparing for us an eternal weight of glory beyond all comparison. And finally, just one more, Colossians 1:24, Pat, Paul says, I rejoice in my suffering. So notice that for Paul, he's able to look at suffering through an entirely different lens than most people do, and is able to see that suffering through the lens of the eternal perspective in a way that leads him to be happy and to rejoice, because he's seeing it within the context of the greater whole. And so a possible explanation as to how the saints in heaven can still be perfectly happy and in bliss, even though knowing the sorrows that we undergo in this life, these are plausible explanations as to how that's done. And the last thought, Pat, is simply to look at God. God is all-knowing. God knows the sufferings that we endure in this life, but yet that in no way takes away from God's complete and perfect happiness of loving himself and willing creation and keeping us in existence and ordering all things to the final end at the end of time. And so if God can be perfectly happy, even though he knows what's going on in our lives and the suffering we're undergoing, so too the saints can be perfectly happy, even though they know the sufferings that their loved ones here on earth are still undergoing. They're seeing it from an entirely different perspective than we are. That's why we have a hard time with the suffering, rightfully so, because we're lacking in this eternal perspective, whereas the saints are seeing it in a whole new light, and they have knowledge that we just simply don't have in this life.
Pat, I'm going to leave it there and say I hope that that's helpful to you. I do appreciate the question, but every single line's full at the moment, actually, with people who have a question about why Catholics believe this or that. You're welcome to call with your why questions today. Our guest is Carla Broussard, and up next is Lisa in Mounds, Oklahoma, listening on Oklahoma Catholic Radio. Lisa, glad to have you. Go ahead with your question for Carla.
Okay, thanks. So I was born and raised Catholic, but have been wandering in the non-denominational church realm for 40 years. And as I'm making my way back to the Catholic Church, one thing I noticed right away was the liturgical calendar and this terminology, ordinary time.
Yeah.
And I'm totally lost. Like, why is it that Protestants don't talk about ordinary time and Catholics do?
Well, I can't speak for the Protestant communities of why they don't speak of ordinary time, but the reason why we speak of ordinary time is because it is a time within our liturgical calendar and our liturgical celebrations that is other than the special times and events in Jesus' life that we want to remember in a special way. Okay? So let's just take, for example, Advent, that special time when we are preparing for the birth of Jesus. So that's going to be a focused time within the year where we have a very focused intention on what we're doing in our spiritual life to prepare our souls to celebrate the birth of Christ in a way that we're going to bear more fruits from that celebration. Then we have the Christmas season, because that's a time when we're remembering the great event of the incarnation of Christ being conceived in Mary's womb, but also, of course, his birth, where you have the revelation to the Gentiles, and salvation history is coming to a climax. And then, of course, we have the season of Lent. That's a very intensive, focused sort of celebration of the liturgy where we're preparing our hearts and our souls to celebrate the greatest event in salvation history, the resurrection of Jesus Christ. The cross is great, but without the resurrection, the cross has no value. And so the resurrection is this great mystery of Christ's life that we want to celebrate in a momentous way. And so we have the Lenten season to prepare us for the Easter season. Ordinary time refers simply to that time in the liturgical year outside of those special times. It's not to say that it's not important, because in the ordinary time, we're still meditating upon the various events of Christ's life. There is no event in Christ's life that is not important. They're all important, but there are some events that we want to emphasize in a greater way because of the salvific value that those events bring for us as followers of Christ. Is that helpful?
Yeah, so like right now we're in Lent, so this is not ordinary time?
Correct.
Okay. Thank you.
All right.
Well,
thanks
thank
for the
you.
question.
God bless you as you work your way back towards the Catholic Church. I hope you'll call again, okay, Tony?
That was Lisa.
Oh, that was Lisa. I'm sorry, Lisa. I don't know why I said, because I'm about to go to Tony. I called you Tony. I apologize, Lisa.
I knew what you meant.
Yeah.
Thank you, Cy.
Yeah. Well, now I hope I didn't drive you away from being a Catholic. Like, they don't even remember my name. Like, I'd want you to, I'm going to move on. I feel worried now. Let's go to Tony in Rochester, New York, who I will just call Tony. Tony's listening on the Station of the Cross. Go ahead with your question for Carlo.
Hi, gentlemen. Thank you for taking my call.
Hi, Tony.
My question is, why are the books Tobit, Judith, Wisdom, Sirach, Baruch, and 1st and 2nd Maccabees included in the Catholic Bible but not the Protestant Bible? And how did they get to be chosen for the Catholic Bible yet omitted from the Protestant Bible? Thanks for taking my call again.
Yeah, it's a great question, Tony. So it's a loaded question, and the answer requires a lot of nuancing and historical background in order to answer that question. So I'm going to refer you to a great resource where you can get all of the details that you want in answering that question, and that's Gary Machuda's book, Why Catholic Bibles Are Bigger, and that's published by our own Catholic Answers Press here. So if you go to shop.catholic.com.
We'll send it to him.
Oh, we'll send it to him. So I said we'll send it. Okay,
it's the 10,000th show. Let's go crazy.
So, Tony, we're going to send you that book. But the short answer to the first question, why do we accept these books to be inspired? The answer to that question is because the Church has definitively said so. So we rest our knowledge, we base our knowledge that these books are inspired upon the infallible testimony of the magisterium of the Church. Now, granted, that's going to presuppose or assume that there is a living, infallible testimony on this earth to speak on behalf of Christ, that there is a magisterium, and that the Pope and the bishops in union with the Pope is that magisterium. So that's a lot of background work that has to be done there. But that's the short answer to the question of why we accept these books to be inspired. Because the magisterium of the Church has spoken on behalf of Christ to declare it to be so in an infallible way. And so we can have knowledge without error that these books are inspired by God. As to why these books are found within our canonical tradition, not within not within the Protestant Bible, it has to do with Martin Luther and the Protestant Reformation in rejecting these books based on several reasons. One of which being that he did not think that these books were a part of the Jewish canonical tradition, and that was true. These 7 books that we have as Catholics that Protestants do not have were not a part of the canonical tradition, tradition of the Jews at the time of Martin Luther, but what he failed to realize was that there were multiple Jewish canonical traditions in the first century and after the first century. Several different canonical traditions, and there's evidence to suggest that Jesus and the apostles were following a particular canonical tradition that did include the 7 books that we have in the Catholic Bibles that Protestants do not. Once again, Gary Michuda's book goes into great detail to substantiate those claims, to defend those claims, that there were these various canonical traditions, even among the Jews. There was no set canonical tradition, and that Jesus and the apostles were following a canonical tradition that included these 7 books, and that was the tradition they were using, considering which Hebrew texts were inspired by God. And then, after many years, almost 400 years, the Catholic Church would eventually give an authoritative list of which books among the Jewish people were inspired by God, although it wasn't infallible at the time, and that was the Synod of Rome in AD 382 with Pope Damasus I. And then it would be subsequently reaffirmed in centuries after that. And then at the Council of Trent, you have the infallible teaching from the magisterium of the church that those 7 books, if we're focusing on the Old Testament here, are indeed inspired by God. So that's a short answer to your short answers to your 2 questions. But for more details, please check out Gary Michuda's book, Why Catholic Bibles Are Bigger. But you won't have to check it out because
we'll mail it to your house. Just give us your address and we'll mail it to your house if you want. Just hang on, Tony, and assistant producer Marie will get your information. Assistant producer Marie, who did a fantastic job sprucing the place up and decorating it for our 10,000th episode, which is just about to come to its conclusion. So I'm sure there's many more calls, but we're really just going to try to do our best. Just do a great job between now and the end of the hour, because this is our 10,000th hour on the air. So I'm looking at you, Nick. I'm looking at you. A couple things to let you know before we go to the break. If you are an audio engineer who would like to be part of a growing Catholic media apostolate, well, we're growing and we need audio engineers. You can just go to Catholic.com/career to look to see what a position is open. Catholic.com/career. Also, it's not spring yet, but we don't care. We're going to start the spring sale. We're going to start it early. 3 weeks to go till spring, but the spring sale starts today. You can get 10% off, up to 25% off at shop.catholic.com. Look for Easter and confirmation gifts. Want help with a new convert with lots of info? Now's your chance. Visit shop.catholic.com now and start saving. Shop.catholic.com.
Hang on. We'll be right back with more Catholic Answers Live.
Underwriting for Catholic Answers Live is provided by Real Estate for Life. Real Estate for Life connects homebuyers and sellers to real estate agents while supporting pro-life organizations. On the web at realestateforlife.org.
Do you love sharing the gospel and want to learn to be more effective? Join the St. Paul Street Evangelization online School of Evangelization. You will learn to build bridges of trust and make disciples by befriending strangers, proclaiming the gospel, inviting people to the church, and praying with others. We'll ask for a pledge of financial support, but if you are unable to give, we'll give you a membership at no cost. Find out more and get involved today at streetevangelization.com. That's streetevangelization.com.
Ever feel like life is just too busy, too much? Constant noise, social ed, traffic, work, paying bills, it just doesn't seem to let up. Well, maybe it's time for a change. God offers us relief and hope. So if you're feeling like you need more peace and less chaos, then find your hope today. Begin at CatholicsComeHome.com.
Having a Great Wednesday with Carlo Broussard, our guest. Carlo is apologist here at Catholic Answers. And in addition to his books that I've got stacked up next to me, the most recent of which is Purgatory is for Real, good news about the afterlife for those who aren't perfect yet. Carlo is a renowned, a noted speaker, and he's actually doing a mission this weekend. So I wanted to let you know, if you're near Oakley, Ohio, near Cincinnati, at St. Cecilia Parish, Carlo's going to be there the 7th, 8th, and 9th from 7 to 8 p.m. doing a Lenten mission. So as part of your Lenten journey, as part of preparing to meet the great feasts of the Triduum and of Easter, you can come and hear Carlo, 7 to 8 p.m., March 7th, 8th, and 9th at St. Cecilia Parish in Oakley, Ohio.
That's going to be fun. I'm looking forward to it. And just for the listeners out there, I'm going to be talking on apologetics for an age of unbelief. Religion, why should I care? Is science the only reliable form of knowledge type stuff? And the historicity of the Gospels and belief in Jesus Christ as God. We're going to be talking about relativism on the second night, Your Truth, My Truth, how to understand and refute relativistic thinking. And then on the third night, we're going to be talking about the Eucharist. Is the Eucharist merely a symbol, or is it a symbol that signifies that makes present what it signifies, namely the substantial presence of Jesus' body and blood? So that's what we'll be talking about. I'm looking forward to it. It's going to be a great time.
Go see Carlo at St. Cecilia and hear what he has to say.
And if folks want to invite me to speak at their parish, they can go to CatholicAnswersSpeakers.com and fill out the online form.
And if you'd like to invite me, you can go to secondratespeakers.com.
Come on, man.
I'm just kidding. Third. Let's go to an anonymous caller. Anonymous, I'm going to push the right button. I'm just determined to start pushing the right buttons today. So, Anonymous, you there with us?
Got me.
Oh, I don't know if you were messing with me or what, but all right, go ahead with your question.
Sorry, I had to sleep for a few seconds just for the laugh. Congratulations on the 10,000th show. Thanks for taking my call.
Thank you.
All right, so my company I worked for a few years back used to make birth control pills, and when we went to Sacred Heart to distribute samples, the salespeople had to go to a different part of the hospital to do that. I was told that Catholics do not believe in birth control. I even threw out a scenario that what happens if two married people find out that becoming pregnant would cause life-threatening disorders for the mother and the child, but probably both would survive it. And I said to them, even in the case of married folks in that situation, you can't get birth control? And they said yes, and I'm just calling to find out why.
Yes, so they are correct in saying, yes, even on that scenario, the husband and wife would need to abstain from the marital act and unite that suffering, because that would indeed be a cross and it would entail suffering, and they would be invited by Christ to unite that cross with the cross of Christ and suffer in and through and with him by his grace in order to grow in holiness. As to why the Catholic Church says no to birth control in the sense of contraception is because it is immoral. That's the simple answer. But of course, the question is, why is it immoral? The answer to that question, Anonymous, is because the simple answer is because the activity of contraception is contrary to our human good. It's inconsistent with what's good for us as human beings. But of course, that raises the question, well, why is it not good for us as human beings? And this gets to that bottom line question of what constitutes what is good for us as human beings and what is bad for us. And so the short summarized answer is that we have certain powers, in particular our sexual powers, and by nature, according to the Creator's design, they are designed for a specific purpose, a specific goal, a specific end, okay? And if we involuntarily utilize or use those powers and actively thwart or frustrate those powers from achieving that end, in this case for our sexual powers, procreation, that would be considered a disordered or perverted activity. And what we mean by that is it's an activity that's inconsistent with what the power is ordered to. So consider this, Anonymous. So let's say we have a doctor. What is the purpose of a doctor's practice of medicine? To heal. If a doctor voluntarily uses his skill of medicine to cause illness, we say that's disordered. We say that's immoral. Why? Because it's inconsistent with the very nature of the practice of medicine. We would call that perversion. That would be a perversion of medicine. Similarly, to engage our sexual powers voluntarily and actively frustrate the achieving of the goal or the purpose that God has designed these sexual powers for would be a perversion of using the sexual powers. It would be contrary to what's good for us as human beings relative to our sexual powers, because what's good for us is that which is going to perfect the powers that we have as human beings. So to voluntarily engage in the marital act, but yet frustrate the achievement of the goal of procreation, that would be acting against what's good for us as human beings within the sexual arena. And because it's against or contrary to what's good for us as human beings within the arena of our sexual powers, it's immoral. And because morality has to do with doing what's good for us and avoiding what's bad for us as human beings. Since this particular activity of contraception, of voluntarily using our sexual powers, engaging in the marital act while actively frustrating the goal that this power is ordered toward, namely procreation, because that's not good for us, and to voluntarily pursue it, that's what we call an immoral act. And so that's why the Catholic Church, that's a summary of why the Catholic Church says no to contraception. Now, for more information on this, Anonymous, I would encourage you to go to our website at Catholic.com. I have several articles that I've written on human sexuality and God's design for human sexuality. But in particular, you want to look up 3 articles, 2 of which are entitled Bringing Sanity Back to Sex, Part 1 and Part 2. And then I also have an article entitled How Contraception Thwarts Love. So not only is contraception immoral, it also thwarts love. Why? Because love is to will the good of another. But this particular human behavior is not good for the other. And so to will it for oneself or to will it for another is to act contrary to love, which is inconsistent with what the marital act is supposed to be, an expression of love. So it's a anti-love sort of behavior, and that's a contradiction.
Anonymous, I assumed by the way you asked the question that you might not be Catholic. How does that answer strike you?
Well, that is correct. I'm not, but that strikes me very well, or giving me more understanding in terms of when I'm talking to these folks what they believe. So I wasn't quite sure what they believe, and now I think I understand it much better. So I really appreciate that answer. Thank you so much.
Well, thank you very much.
Yeah, and this touches on, in a particular way, the situation where he was asking about, well, what about this scenario? Should they still not use birth control because of this foreseen effect that could come about? And the reason why the individual who was talking to Anonymous here is correct is because we ought to never do evil in order to bring about some greater good or even to prevent an evil. Because the moral life, which is just the life of a human being, we're supposed to be moral as human beings, rational beings, is to pursue the good and avoid the evil.
And that we can know with our rational faculties, but it's also a revealed truth, right? That we are to do good and avoid evil.
Oh, yeah. I mean, Jesus, of course, teaches that. That's a part of the gospel. And the reason is because insofar as we pursue the good, we're pursuing who is goodness itself, God, which is going to bring us complete human happiness. And Jesus reveals to us that is in and through the Christian life and ultimately in heaven.
I feel sad that our 10,000th hour is over. Can I keep the balloons up for the 10,001 hour, Marie? Is that all right? Do they have to go back? Did you rent them or did we buy them? All right. We get to keep the balloons up. We're going to continue with Carlos. So Damien and Austin and Thomas and Topeka and anybody else who's on the line, we'll be away a couple minutes and we'll come back and start answering questions again. So please stay on the line if you're on the line. If you haven't dialed yet and you've got a question about why Catholics believe something that they believe, as our anonymous caller just asked about contraception, the number 888-318-7884. Hello and welcome back to Catholic Answers Live. Big celebration this hour. It's our 10,001th hour of radio. 10,001th time we have What a wonderful crowd. Thank you. You're all wonderful. Thanks for coming out. Appreciate it. Thank you all for social distancing and wearing those masks before cheering and clapping. Carlo Broussard is our guest. He was our guest for our 10,000th episode, and now he's our guest for our 10,001th episode. Congratulations, Carlo. You're a very big deal.
Well, thanks. I'm glad to be here.
What happened with his microphone? Oh,
there it is.
Sounded far away for a minute.
Indeed.
Okay, so Carlo, we're going to continue with the whys of Catholic belief.
Why does the Catholic Church teach? Fill in the blank. Whether you're not Catholic and you're just inquiring about what we believe as Catholics, maybe you think we believe weird things.
Yeah.
And you want to understand why we believe what we believe. Or maybe you're a Catholic and you just don't understand something. Maybe you're an RCIA and Easter Vigil is fixing to come up and you haven't gotten the clarification that you want as to why we believe what we believe in RCIA class. And so this is the hour for you.
And the way to call is 888-318-7884. Any question on the whys of Catholic belief is welcome. Already, we left quite a few folks hanging during our 10,000th hour, so I'm going to get right back into it here during the 10,001th hour. Thomas in Topeka, Kansas, watching on YouTube Live. You are first up. Go ahead with your question for Carlo.
Hey, Sign Carlo. Thanks for answering my call. So I may have just been asleep during, I went to Catholic school, I may have just been asleep during when this happened, who knows, but in the Apostles' Creed, when it says that Jesus descended into hell, why did he descend into hell?
All right. First of all, did you sleep a lot in Catholic school? Because if you did...
Man, I was a terrible student.
Okay, yeah, you and me both. All right, fair enough.
Okay, so Thomas, the first question is... what does the church mean by hell when in the creed we profess he descended into hell? The church does not mean the damned. The Catechism of the Catholic Church makes that very clear in paragraph 633. So now the question is, what is the creed talking about? Well, we profess that when Jesus died, he descended into what is referred to in Hebrew as Sheol, or in Greek Hades, but that particular state of existence in the afterlife that consisted of all of the Old Testament righteous souls, all of those people in the Old Testament who died in friendship with God, right? And having a faith that's pleasing to God, in a faith that included an implicit belief in the Messiah, Jesus, thus dying in friendship with God, dwelling in the afterlife in what was affectionately called by the Jews Abraham's bosom. Remember, Jesus talks about that abode, that particular state of existence in the afterlife in Luke chapter 16, when he gives the parable of the rich man and Lazarus, and how after Lazarus dies, he goes and he's in Abraham's bosom, experiencing this comfort and this bliss, in contrast to the rich man who's in a place of torment, which the context suggests is hell. So Jesus did not descend into the dead in order to go to the damned. He descended into the realm of the dead in order to go and preach, right? And I use that word in a loose sense there because he wouldn't have had his vocal cords to preach in that way, but to make known to those righteous souls the revelation that he is of the Father, that he is the Messiah, and the graces that he's won for us through his death on the cross, and that he will win through his resurrection when he will rise the day after, when he's descending into the dead. St. Peter actually teaches this in 1 Peter chapter 3, verse 19. St. Peter talks about how Jesus went and preached to the spirits in prison. And the church actually cites this text in the Catechism of the Catholic Church concerning this realm of the dead to which Jesus descended when he died. And so there, St. Peter is telling us Jesus went there to preach to them, to reveal to them the good news that he revealed from the Father. And it would be those souls that Jesus would take into heaven, the beatific vision, with him upon his ascension. Is that helpful for you, Thomas?
Absolutely. Thank you so much once again.
All right. Well,
thank you.
Well, you see, listen to this. God's divine providence, right?
Yes.
If Thomas, we're talking about in the last hour how God can bring good out of permitted defects and evil and stuff. Well, God brought a good out of Thomas falling asleep in catechism class.
He got a good rest.
We got to meet Thomas.
And we got to meet Thomas.
We got a new friend, Si. Yeah. And he called with a great question. So
thanks, Thomas. I hope you will call again. Our number is 888-318-7884. We're rolling right along, and there are lots of folks on the line, so I'm going to keep rolling all the way down to Austin, Texas now. Watching on YouTube Live is Damien. Hi, Damien. You got a question for Carlo?
Hi, gentlemen. Congratulations again. Hello, Carlo. Hello, Fi again. Yeah, my question, I wasn't sure if it was appropriate for this show or if it was more for next week's show, but it's about the teachings of the Catholic Church that homosexuality is an official moral evil. And from an outsider's perspective within the current climate of the United States as a nation, the people that comes across as like an official hate group statement. Just like the KKK targets the African Americans for just being black. How is this not bigotry and making you guys an open hate group towards the homosexual community, where that you teach this their sexuality being a moral evil?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, great question, Damien. I actually have a few articles on this online as well at Catholic.com. And I have a little short 3-minute ready reason that I did as well that we have on our YouTube channel, I think. And you could probably research it at Catholic.com. Damien is opposing homosexual behavior bigotry. And so I think what we have to do, Damien, is we have to charitably articulate to people that we are making a negative moral evaluation of a behavior without making any sort of judgment as to the culpability of the person engaging in the immoral behavior. Now, what's at issue here is, first and foremost, is it even reasonable to make a negative moral evaluation of a particular behavior? And that's the first question we have to answer in conversation with folks. So if Si and I are having a conversation and he makes the claim that we're bigots for saying homosexual activity is immoral, my first question would be, well, do you think that we can make a judgment upon a behavior in a negative way in any sense? Are you saying that we cannot make a negative moral evaluation of any behavior whatsoever, like rape? Are we to say that we cannot make a negative moral evaluation about rape or torture of children?
Or Damien mentioned racism, KKK racism.
That's right, that's right. Should we not make a negative moral evaluation about racism? And if the answer is, well, yeah, we can make negative moral evaluations about those behaviors. Okay, well, if it's fair game to make these sort of moral evaluations of behavior without making judgments about the culpability for the person engaging in the behavior, well, then we as Catholics are justified and reasonably able to make an evaluation about this particular behavior involving our sexual powers, namely same-sex sexual activity. And so then the question becomes, well, why is it immoral? And I gave a sketch of some answers to that question to a previous caller. I don't know if you were listening, but I have articles on this as well at Catholic.com. Just type in Bringing Sanity Back to Sex, Part 1 and Part 2, and you can get a sense of why, as Catholics, we view this sort of sexual activity as to be immoral. The final thought, Damien, with regard to the bigotry label, remember, we have to properly define what bigotry is. Bigotry is not even merely, bigotry is not having a negative opinion about some particular behavior, okay? What bigotry is having a negative opinion based on emotion rather than reason. Are there some Christians out there who might be bigots? judging this activity to be immoral simply based upon emotion without thinking about it and without giving reasons for it? Yeah, sure. And maybe the bigotry label applies to them. But does that apply to the Catholic Church itself in the Church's condemnation of this sort of behavior as immoral? The answer is no, because we do have reasons why the Church judges this particular behavior to be immoral. Therefore, the Church's teaching doesn't fall under the category of bigotry. And any Christian who goes about making negative judgments about this particular behavior, saying it's immoral, and giving reasons for that judgment, they don't fall under the category of bigotry. What's interesting, Damien and Cy, is that many in contemporary culture who slapped the label of bigotry upon us as Christians for saying same-sex sexual activity is immoral are actually guilty of the very thing they're accusing us of. Because often when they slap that label of bigotry, they were making a negative evaluation about us based on emotion rather than reason.
Yeah.
And so and I think, Damien, in conversation with people in contemporary culture, if we discern that it's possible to share these thoughts with them in a way that it's not just going to lead to a shouting match and they're going to just leave the room, if it's possible to charitably and gently articulate these ideas to try and untangle the web there, we might gain some ground in convincing them that the Catholic Church is not guilty of bigotry in opposing same-sex sexual activity, and that the Catholic Church is actually right, even by the light of reason itself, just using reason without biblical revelation, that this sort of activity is contrary to our good as human beings and thus immoral.
Damien, I'm going to have to leave it there because we are a little bit late for our first break on our 10,001th show. I hope you'll call again. We always enjoy it when you call. But we got to take this break. Right back with more Carlo Broussard, The Whys of Catholic Belief, right after this.
Stay with us for more Catholic Answers Live.
The Aquinas Writing Advantage program is part of Homeschool Connection's set of online courses for your Catholic homeschool. Homeschool Connection's website is homeschoolconnections.com.
How should we pray? The disciples asked our Lord that question, and he gave them the Our Father, or the Lord's Prayer. But he also gave them the liturgy, which is the most privileged form of prayer in the Catholic tradition, especially the holy sacrifice of the Mass. We can pray with the whole Church in the liturgy of the hours, or the divine office. And we should also pray in our own private room, our secret chamber, as Jesus says, and then our Father who sees us in secret will reward us.
Ever ask yourself, why does the Catholic Church teach that? Whether it's a moral question, as our friend Damien just asked about homosexual behavior. Actually, Damien asked about homosexuality, and you used homosexual behavior, and we do make a distinction.
Good point, yes. And so, I assumed he was talking about the behavior, because that's what the Church says is immoral.
Right.
And since he had brought up immorality, I naturally assumed he was talking about that. But you are correct, Cy, that we do draw a distinction between the behavior that we consider to be immoral and the attraction that an individual might have to a member of the same sex in a romantic way. The Church still says that romantic attraction to a member of the same sex is disordered insofar as it's leading a person to something that they ought not to engage in.
Right.
So it's disordered in that sense, but it is not immoral, the attraction itself, that is.
Right. Oh, okay. I don't know why that just hit me as we were coming back. This is our 10,001th episode. That's what we already have all these balloons in the studio here with us. And the whys of Catholic beliefs. I mean, why? That's why this came up. I was saying if it's a why about a moral issue, as Damien had, or a doctrinal issue, as some have had throughout the course of our hour and 15 minutes so far on this program. Whatever your why question is, why does the Catholic Church teach And then you fill in the blank, you're welcome to call 888-318-7884. Oh, good, we get to go all the way to the Philippines where it's morning. As a matter of fact, it's Thursday morning in the Philippines. James watching on YouTube live there. Very glad to have you, James. Go ahead with your question for Carlo.
Hi there, guys.
Hello, James.
Thank you for taking my call. So, this issue was a couple of years ago, but I saw news here in the Philippines about evil rosaries, like satanic ones. Essentially, they look like normal rosaries, but they have the pentagram, the pagan sun, and other symbols, I guess.
I've actually seen that, James. Yeah, I don't know anything about it, but I have actually seen that, yeah.
Yeah, but then you know how some of our dear brothers and sisters in the Protestant world work online. You know they would comment that the rosary itself is evil. So two questions, I guess. Can you please re-clarify why praying the rosary isn't evil? And then if I come into possession and pray one of these satanic rosaries, what do I do?
Oh, like you prayed the actual rosary, but you didn't realize you were using satanic beads?
No, I haven't prayed one exactly.
Like somebody gave it to you or something?
No, but I do know a couple of people who come into possession of it, and they look like normal rosaries. And it's not like you're looking for...
Yeah, right. So accidentally, you're praying the rosary, and you have beads in your hand. You didn't realize they were Satan beads. You thought they were holy beads.
Right. Well, if that's the case, well, the first thought is no longer use it, so stop using it. And secondly, throw it away or burn it, right? Yeah. Now, should you be worried that you got some kind of like curse on you or something like that? No, because as long as you're in sanctifying grace and you're not in a state of mortal sin, Jesus got you in his hand. And so you can rest assured that it will in no way affect you due to its spoiled origins, okay? Concerning the rosary itself and why it's not an evil and why it's a good thing, well, we have to first ask the question, well, what is the rosary? Well, the rosary is, if we're talking about the material object itself, it's just a device that we use, a material thing that we use in order to help us meditate on the mysteries of Christ's life. Is that a good thing? Yes, it's a good thing. Now, our Protestant friends will say, well, you're asking Mary to pray for you. That's a bad thing. Well, that's a different issue. So if we're talking about the rosary itself, it's simply meant to help us meditate upon the mysteries of Christ's life when we don't have the scriptures in our hand to actually read it and open it. It's a mnemonic tool that helps us memorize the scriptures because the majority of the prayers are coming straight from the Bible. So it's a meditation on God's word. That's a great thing. Now, secondly, the second important thing about the rosary, which our Protestant friends probably won't get as easy as the first answer, that is to say, when a rosary is blessed, it's what we call a sacramental. So there's a certain prayer that's attached to and associated with the material object, so that whenever the material object is being used, the prayer is present. It's like the prayer is being prayed right then and there when you're using the sacramental so that God can shower graces upon you to help you grow in holiness. That's going to be a bit more difficult for our Protestant friends to get and to grasp and to accept. So if you're in a conversation with a Protestant, I would take the route of simply saying the rosary is scripture on a rope, as one popular preacher used to say. And it's a way in which we can meditate on the mysteries of Christ's life as we're going about in our daily activities. So that's what I would say to that, James. What do you think, brother?
That's perfect, Carlo. Thank you very much.
All right.
Perfect is very good. That's a very
well, thanks for calling, man. We appreciate that.
Thanks, James. Super. It's always exciting for us to get to talk to folks on the other side of the Pacific Ocean as well. Let's go to New York. That's on the other side of a continent. Christian in New York, you are up next. Go ahead with your question for Carlo.
I've been waiting patiently. Can you guys hear me good?
Oh, well, we can hear you. This is I don't know if you know Christian. His family's from the Dominican Republic. He lives in New York.
I remember I was on one time when he called before.
Yeah,
Christian, how can we help you today, brother?
Yes, I know you guys are excited to have me on here, and I am
we are.
as well. Yes, so because we're talking about Catholic theology, I wanted to, because I'm in New York, in my middle school, I'm in 8th grade, they're teaching the theory of evolution in science.
Right.
And so I have my points on why it's very controversial and why I may not agree on it. And I just want to, before you guys answer, I want to give my points on why I don't necessarily believe it, but it's so weird that I heard Catholics accept that theology, but in the Bible it says God made everybody in his own image, each one of us in his own image. We were obviously not, I don't believe we were in the image of monkeys, of apes, and so my point is, if we came from apes, and based off evolution, it's based off what survived, how do apes still exist if we were from apes? You know what I'm saying? It doesn't make sense to me. And as well, I did my research. So Charles Darwin, he was the founder of this theory, and his grandfather is actually the one who passed that theory to him, and his grandfather was a Satanist. Worshipper.
I'd be careful on that one, Christian.
Sure.
It's entirely possible. I'm not saying that it's wrong, but most, I think, people would say that Charles Darwin was a respectable scientist. So we want to deal with him intellectually on that level. But let's let Carlos say some things about evolution and what the Catholic Church teaches about it, and I'll come back to you, Christian.
Right. So first of all, Christian, it's important to know that the Catholic Church does not put its definitive stamp of approval on the scientific theory of evolution, nor does it deny, absolutely speaking, the scientific theory of evolution. Whether we're talking about the development of species and the certain potentials maybe residing within certain things within the material world and under certain conditions, these potentials are actualized in order to develop into even a new nature with regard to non-rational material creatures, and also too with regard to at least the development of the human body itself prior to the first human being, namely Adam. So the Catholic Church, because the Catholic Church does not give its definitive stamp of approval or denial of the scientific theory of evolution, Catholics are permitted to go at it, so to speak, right? And to disagree concerning whether they think the scientific theory of evolution is legit or not, right or wrong. Now, I will say that Pope Benedict XVI, Pope St. John Paul II, they said some favorable things about the scientific theory of evolution, but that doesn't bind a Catholic to assent to it and accept it as true. So you can have two Catholics who are both faithful to the magisterium, and one Catholic accept the scientific theory of evolution, assuming that he's not accepting it with all of the atheistic spins that are often put on it or with it. And then you can have another Catholic who denies the scientific theory of evolution. And both would be within good standing of the church. And finally, one last thought, Christian. You're a pretty sharp guy from what I can tell. You've probably already come across this, but for the sake of our listeners, it's important to note that Pope Pius XII, in his encyclical Humani Generis, in section 36, he says this: the teaching authority of the church does not forbid that in conformity with the present state of human sciences and sacred theology, research and discussions on the part of men experienced in both fields take place with regard to the doctrine of evolution, in as far as it inquires into the origin of the human body as coming from pre-existent and living matter. So there, Pope Pius XII allows for the view that possibly even the human body could be explained in this naturalistic sense of evolution. Now, granted, this is not in any way excluding the divine design of the Creator, because we can reason that even with a natural explanation, you're going to need the first cause, you're going to need the supreme source of intelligence who's designed it and directing everything to their ends and their perfections. That's the fifth way of St. Thomas Aquinas, Christian. And so it's possible that even the body, the development of the human body can fall under the category of evolution. But Pope Pius XII is very clear that we cannot say that the rational soul evolved, for that requires a divine act by God himself directly. So it's possible that you have an evolution from pre-existent matter of some sort of sentient or creature, non-rational creature, and at some time God creates the first man by infusing a rational soul. But we don't have to believe that, but it's a permitted view.
Christian, if you'll hang on, I'm going to let you just respond to Carlo, because a couple of reasons. One, I do think this is a very, very important issue. The other is you're pretty much my favorite caller. So I am playing favorites. That's just how I am. It's the 10,001th episode of Catholic Answers Live. We have passed the 10,000 mark. You're welcome to call 888-318-7884.
Catholic Answers Live. We're here for you.
To many people, even many Christians, purgatory is a fantasy, or worse, a wicked lie invented by the church to make salvation complicated and keep people in fear. But I'm here to tell you that purgatory is fact, not fiction. The Bible supports it, Christians have historically believed in it, and it makes theological sense. In my new book, Purgatory is for Real, I provide the evidence and reasoning to help you understand this controversial doctrine and demonstrate how it's actually a joyful, hopeful reality, not something shadowy and mysterious, but a sign of God's love and mercy. To get your copy of Purgatory is for Real, visit shop.catholic.com today or ask for it at a good Catholic bookstore near you.
Did you know you can access Catholic Answers Live right from your phone or other mobile device? Download the Catholic Answers Live app today. The Catholic Answers Live app, available now on iOS and Android.
If you spend any time on Twitter, Facebook, or mainstream media, you're probably familiar with the litany of slogans that skeptics employ to rescue you from the foolish belief that God exists. The constant onslaught seems to leave people with the idea that they have no alternative but to embrace atheism. How can a Christian respond? In One Less God Than You, John DeRosa breaks down 20 of the most common atheist challenges and shows you how to craft effective answers. Atheism is more aggressive and widespread than ever. Read One Less God Than You and prepare yourself to respond with the joyful truth that God is real. To get your copy of One Less God Than You, visit shop.catholic.com today or ask for it at a good Catholic bookstore near you.
Everyone has had their life turned upside down because of the pandemic.
We'll be discussing COVID 1 year later tomorrow on Take Two with Jerry and Debbie
on most of these EWTN stations.
Now back to Catholic Answers Live.
Welcome back to Catholic Answers Live. Having a lot of fun with Carlo Broussard, our guest. Carlo is apologist here at Catholic Answers, the author. I'm going to tell you the name of his books right now, real quick. Prepare the Way, Overcoming Obstacles to God, the Gospel, and the Church. Meeting the Protestant Challenge, How to Answer 50 Biblical Objections to Catholic Beliefs. And the new one, Purgatory is for Real, Good News About the Afterlife for Those Who Aren't Perfect Yet. On the line, our friend Christian from New York. He's in the 8th grade. He's being taught evolution. Wanted to get some Carlo's input on how a Catholic can approach evolution. You are very skeptical, Christian, about evolution. What'd you think of what Carlo had to say?
So here's the thing. With me is that it's dang it, what I was trying to say was that in the Bible, so I don't deny genetics, right? Obviously, genetics is a thing. So I'm not saying the theory, it's like in between, because God said in the Bible that he separated animals from humans. I mean, he made it clear that he made humans and animals, but in a way, what do I believe in it? I mean, do I just, how do I respond to the science teacher,
I get you, Christian. It really does seem like the conflict for you is between the science and what's in the book of Genesis, at the beginning of the book of Genesis. So maybe we could just tackle that real quick.
Right. Well, if that's the issue, there would be no reason to reject the scientific theory of evolution. If the issue is, well, it seems to conflict with Genesis and the creation story, because the church teaches, for example, the Catechism of the Catholic Church in its section on creation, when it's talking about the six-day succession, explicitly teaches that it's symbolic. And now that's not an infallible statement, but it is magisterial. So this is common teaching of the church that Catholics can take the six-day succession as symbolic. There are certain figures of speech, metaphorical language being used. Pope Pius XII, in that previously mentioned encyclical Humani Generis, talks about this. Pope Leo XIII, from what I remember, has an encyclical where he talks about this when he's talking about the author's intention in writing sacred scripture, how they employ certain figures of speech to convey certain historical truths. So the creation story in Genesis in no way should be a reason for rejecting the scientific theory of evolution, because there is a way in which the two can be reconciled, which is permitted by the church. Now, granted, there might be a Catholic who says, I don't buy it, right? I interpret the creation story in this way, literalistically, which does conflict with the scientific narrative of the universe, but I'm just going to reject the scientific narrative.
Yeah.
Some can do that. And the church allows for a Catholic to take that view. I think the bottom line, Christian, for you to realize is that the church does not obligate you to reject the scientific theory of evolution, assuming that it's disentangled from the atheistic spins that are associated with it. We must affirm that God directly creates the rational soul. God is responsible for the unity of the body-soul, the unity of the human being, of body and soul. We must affirm that. We must affirm that if there is some sort of evolutionary process, and it turns out to be that is the case, even for possibly the human body prior to the first human being, that is guided and directed by the first cause, who is the source of all directed activity and things being directed to an end, and that's what we call God.
Christian, thanks. I know we'll get to hear from you again, so I'll just say I'll look forward to that. And thank you very much for joining us on our 10,001th episode. Let's go to JC now in Oregon, listening on the Catholic Answers Live app. JC, do you have the new Catholic Answers Live app?
Yeah.
Oh, you do? Good. Oh, how old are you, JC?
11.
Wow. Oh, all right. Well, I hope you're enjoying the new Catholic Answers Live app. Thank you for your question. Go ahead and ask Carla what you got on your mind.
Why do Catholics believe in purgatory? Limbo.
Limbo. Okay. All right.
You almost got a free book there, by the way. By saying purgatory, you almost got a free book. But why do Catholics believe in limbo?
Okay, JC, which limbo are you referring to? Are you referring to limbo, which refers to like where unbaptized children would go after death? Or are you referring to limbo in the sense of where the Old Testament saints were existing before Christ ascended into heaven?
Where the Old Testament saints went before descended into heaven.
Before they went to heaven. Okay, so that limbo is called the limbo of the fathers, and we believe they were existing in the afterlife based upon, for example, Jesus' teaching in Luke 16. That's a parable of the rich man and Lazarus. But Jesus' parables are always based upon certain realities, things about reality and about the world and about the way the world is. And so it would be inappropriate for Jesus to give us a parable about the rich man existing in the afterlife in a state of comfort and bliss if that's not what was the case at that time. So we have Jesus' teaching about Lazarus being in Abraham's bosom. We also have St. Peter, I quoted it earlier in 1 Peter 3:19, where it says that Jesus went and preached to the spirits in prison when he died. And so that would indicate that there are some souls existing in the afterlife that is neither heaven nor hell. And those souls are those souls from the Old Testament, especially when you read St. Peter in context. So from the biblical text, we have knowledge that there was a limbo of the fathers. And then, of course, we have the teaching of the church as well. The church teaches, as I quoted earlier, paragraph 633 in the Catechism of the Catholic Church, JC. The church teaches that when Christ died, he descended into, quote-unquote, hell, as we say in the Creed. But what we mean is that he descended into the abode of the abode of the dead to preach and reveal the good news to all those righteous saints in the Old Testament who would eventually go to heaven when Christ ascended. So that's what's referred to as the limbo of the fathers. Is that helpful for you, JC?
Yes.
Okay. All right, JC, since you said the word purgatory, I'd like to send you a free copy of Carlo's book, Purgatory is for Real, Good News About the Afterlife for those who aren't perfect yet. I know that you're 11 and you can't give out your address without permission, but maybe if there's mom or dad or somebody there that can talk to Marie and give them an address, we'll send you a free copy of that book. Did you want to say something else, Carlo?
Yeah, I just can't help but hear people in the car listening saying, well, what about the limbo of the children?
Oh,
right?
Okay, all right, yeah.
I mean, we're going to talk about limbo. So just very briefly, the limbo of the children refers to a proposed explanation as to where unbaptized children, before the use of reason, intellect, and will, would go in the afterlife. So that was proposed because the church does teach anybody who dies, even with original sin alone, cannot enter the beatific vision. Okay, that's an infallible teaching. If soul has original sin, no beatific vision. Okay?
Yeah, okay.
But whether unbaptized babies fit that category, right, of dying with only original sin, we don't know. So this was a proposed explanation, assuming that they did. The church, in her magisterial teaching at times, gave some approval of it and would say, well, we shouldn't necessarily deny it. And many theologians will argue that it still is common teaching of the Catholic Church that you can't go around publicly dissenting from. Other theologians will argue it is merely a theological opinion. But I think we can go to the Catechism here in paragraph 1261, and it's very insightful, where the Catechism is talking about children who die without baptism. This is a perfect opportunity for the Catechism to talk about this proposed idea of limbo of the children, but it chooses not to, and it gives us this paragraph 1261. It teaches us that the church can only entrust them to the mercy of God. Okay, so we entrust these departed little ones into the mercy of God, and we remember that God desires all men to be saved, and we recall Jesus' tenderness toward children, which calls them to say, let the children come to me. And for these reasons, the Catechism concludes, these reasons allow us to hope. It's not saying it is so.
Right.
It's not saying it is not so. These reasons allow us to hope that there is a way of salvation for children who have died without baptism. In other words, we have reason to hope that children who die without baptism do not fit that bill, so to speak, of dying with only original sin and thus being excluded from the beatific vision.
JC, thank you. I think JC's on the someone's on the line with Marie, so they're getting I think they'll get the free book, Purgatory is for Real, Good News About the Afterlife for those who aren't perfect yet. We do have to take another break, even though it is our 10,001th show. I just want to read you what something Rich sent to us. Rich sent us this note. It says, as a former Jehovah's Witness and an adult convert to the Catholic Church, it took more than 5 years of investigation to overcome decades of bias and misinformation. Carlo Broussard's clear logic and abundant source material in his book, Meeting the Protestant Challenge, could have saved me years had it been around. If only all Jehovah's Witnesses and Protestants would give it a read. Well, you can get it for quite a bit off right now at shop.catholic.com because we've got the spring sale where stuff is already 10 to 25% off, and they're giving an additional 15% off Meeting the Protestant Challenge at shop.catholic.com right now. You just put in the promo code CHALLENGE. The word CHALLENGE is the promo code, and you get an additional, in addition to the already spring savings, you get an additional 15% off Carlo's book, Meeting the Protestant Challenge.
You're listening to Catholic Answers Live.
Underwriting for Catholic Answers Live is provided by Real Estate for Life. Real Estate for Life connects homebuyers and sellers to real estate agents while supporting pro-life organizations. On the web at realestateforlife.org.
A lot of people think that street evangelization involves yelling out of a bullhorn telling people that they're going to hell. Not so with St. Paul Street Evangelization. Our methods are non-confrontational and effective. We simply offer information on the Catholic faith along with rosaries, miraculous medals, and prayer. Pope Francis wrote about how beautiful it is to see street preachers joyfully bringing Jesus to every corner of the earth. Street evangelization is fun and fruitful. Join us today at streetevangelization.com.
The wisdom of Mother Angelica.
You know, I have never seen women who want to be equal absolutely degrading themselves. And yet the media degrades your nature, your beauty as a woman, your goodness. Let us pray at some point our dear Lord touches their hearts.
For more information on Mother Angelica, visit Religious Catalog at EWTNRC.com.
Welcome back to Catholic Answers Live. It's the whys of Catholic belief this hour. Why? Like, if you got a question, why? Why do you Catholics believe that? That's what you can call about today, 888-318-7884. Carla Broussard, our guest on the line. Joseph in Indiana watching on YouTube Live. Joseph, you got a why question for Carla?
Yes, I do. Just real quick, I heard you guys talking about the homosexuality, and I just came across this. I thought about this thing I heard once where the world in general has a sin problem, from lust to greed, but that also includes homosexuality. And people defend homosexuality saying, I was born this way. Well, in a way, they're right. They were born with original sin, and like us all, Satan uses whatever can catch our eye to get us away from God.
Yes, so, including Hostess products. You are correct. You are correct. Satan does do that. All right, one of my things is Hostess products. That's why I said that. All right, well, I appreciate that, Joseph. And it is, and particularly if what you're trying to say is it's not the intention of Catholics in any ways to imply that a person with same-sex attractions is somehow awful or irredeemable, or not just like every one of us who's attracted to things we should not be attracted to and sometimes succumbs to those attractions. So, Joseph, thank you. But go ahead with your question for Carlo.
Yes. So I'm no theologian, just a free thinker who loves God, Jesus, and the Holy Spirit.
Amen, brother.
As someone who was raised in a traditional Catholic church, I come to you with a question about purgatory, and I don't want to sway the 11-year-old who just called or anything like that. God just works in good ways. Specifically, I want to know about the biblical text that claims the middle ground is true. And in my opinion, I feel the hierarchy of the Catholic Church throughout history has defined the meaning of these certain texts that claim to define purgatory. But when I read the Bible, Jesus clearly says in the Gospels that he is the only straight and narrow path to get to heaven, and not all that say, Lord, Lord, will he acknowledge. So if you can enlighten me a little bit on that, I would appreciate it.
All right, Joseph.
Well, there's a lot there on the table, Joseph, that you threw out there. So starting from the last, and we'll work our way back, if my memory can work here, we affirm that Jesus says, not everyone who says, Lord, Lord, will enter the kingdom of heaven. But it doesn't follow from that there is no hierarchy instituted by Christ to lead us to heaven. The second to last point that you made concerning that Jesus is the straight and narrow path and only he is the way, we agree. John 14:6, he is the way, the truth, and the life. But once again, it doesn't follow from that there is no hierarchy instituted by Christ to help us stay the course and follow the true way, Jesus, in order to get to heaven, in order to get the right picture of the way, in order to know the way in its fullness, in order to get to heaven. And so the question really becomes, did Jesus establish a hierarchy in a way that these constituted ranking officials could speak on his behalf? And the answer is yes. We would argue the answer is yes, given the New Testament evidence of Peter and the apostles. At least the apostles as a group spoke with authority on behalf of Christ to guide and to lead and to oversee the Christians in the first century. We would give evidence that Peter was the leader of that particular group, the Apostolic College, the 12 apostles, as a visible principle and source of unity, given Matthew 16:18, that he is the metaphorical rock. And that hierarchy, those constituted officials ordained other men to succeed them. They're called bishops. They are not on the same level as the apostles, because the apostles are unique insofar as they're witnesses of the resurrected Lord, and they were receiving divine revelation, new public revelation. But the bishops who succeeded the apostles did succeed them in the institutional office of the episcopae, as we see in Acts 1:20, 1 Timothy 3:1. We put those together. The episcopae is the office of the overseer. So there are men who succeeded the apostles insofar as they oversaw the local churches, guiding and shepherding those local churches to continue transmitting the doctrine of the apostles. The Catholic view, Joseph, and you are correct, that the hierarchy today and the Pope and the bishops in union with the Pope, given the fact that they have the historical continuity to Peter and the apostles, and having the authority to speak on behalf of Christ, it is this hierarchy, this church, that has authoritatively interpreted for us these scriptural texts. At least authoritatively interpreted for us the revelation or the teaching of Jesus concerning the doctrine of purgatory. That this is a truth that we can take to the bank, and it is without error. And the church in her tradition has appealed to certain biblical texts to support that definitive teaching. And I'm sure you're familiar with those texts, Joseph, but we can send you a book if you don't mind, if you want. We can send you my book, Purgatory is for Real, Good News About the Afterlife for Those Who Aren't Perfect Yet. And I go into great detail in the book, Joseph, where I look at those passages that the church has traditionally appealed to support her doctrine of purgatory. And I give positive exegesis, like why do Catholics think this teaches purgatory? And then I address some of the Protestant counters to those passages. Matthew 12:32 being one of them from Jesus. 1 Corinthians 3:11 through 15 being one from Paul's teaching, just to name a couple.
Joseph, hang on the line, and because there are quite a few folks on the line, so I want to try to get to everybody. Time is short, but hang on the line and give your address to Marie, and we'll send you Purgatory is for Real if you'd like that. I'm going to go to Amelia now in Dallas, Texas. Amelia, are you there with us?
Yes, sir. So my question is, why does Jesus refer to himself as the Son of Man?
That is an excellent question. May I inquire as to your age, Amelia? How old are you?
9 years old, sir.
Well, you are a very well put together 9-year-old. You present yourself very well. Somebody has done a fine job.
Yes.
So why does Jesus identify himself as the Son of Man, Carlo?
Yes. So the answer, Amelia, is Jesus is referring to a prophecy from the prophet Daniel in Daniel chapter 7. Where Daniel gives a prophecy of how there will be one like a son of man coming on the clouds of heaven. And coming on the clouds of heaven is a way of saying that this is like a divine, godly figure, because only God comes on the clouds of heaven. That's a Jewish way of saying God's coming to judge the enemies of God, God's people, okay? And so Daniel's prophesying that there's going to be a time where this one, like a son of man, is going to come on the clouds of heaven. He's going to come in judgment, and he's going to establish this great kingdom, and he's going to hand the kingdom over to the saints, the prophet Daniel says. Well, in the New Testament, when Jesus refers to himself as the Son of Man, he's alluding to, or he's calling to mind, Amelia, for us, that prophecy from Daniel 7, saying he is the one the prophet Daniel was foretelling about. This one like a son of man coming on the clouds of heaven to bring judgment. And Amelia, Jesus does this explicitly in Mark chapter 14, verses 62 through 64. So if you read that in your Bible, that's where Jesus quotes Daniel and tells Caiaphas the high priest, you will see the Son of Man coming on the clouds of heaven. That's a direct quote from Daniel chapter 7, and he's applying it to himself. So that's why, Amelia, Jesus refers to himself as the Son of Man. He's telling the people that he is the fulfillment of Daniel's prophecy and Daniel chapter 7, which has a whole lot of importance, right? There's a lot of important stuff about that concerning Jesus' kingdom, which is the church, concerning God's judgment upon the enemies of Jesus who are putting him to death, and how the city of Jerusalem would eventually be destroyed in AD 70, and a whole lot of other stuff. What do you think of that?
Well, thank you, sir. That really explains it.
Right.
Amelia,
Wow, Amelia, she got some spunk,
Is
man.
this the only question you've ever had, or do you every now and then you think I'd like to call them and ask them a question, Amelia? Because I would really like it if you would call again.
Well, this is the only question I've ever really had, sir.
Oh, well, if you come up with another one, would you please call?
Yes, sir.
All right,
Amen.
Amelia. Thanks. I appreciate it.
Did you catch that? Yes, sir.
Yes,
No, sir.
She
must be from the South somewhere, man.
Yeah, so are you, sir.
That's right. That's how I grew up.
I like that, Amelia. She's just sharp.
Indeed, she is.
Let's go to Anchorage, Alaska now. Well, boy, that's the opposite. We're going to go all the way from Texas up to Anchorage, Alaska. Listening on KHRM is Daniel in Alaska. Daniel, go ahead. Wait, is Daniel there? I'm looking for Daniel. Did he drop? I think he's not. I was so excited. I was so excited to go to Alaska. All right, well, we'll come right back here to California. We'll go to Nicholas. And Daniel, if you're there, hang on, we'll get to you if you're there. Nicholas in Cypress, California, watching on YouTube Live. You are next. Nicholas, go ahead with your question for Carlo.
Hello. I'm asking you about the concept of the creation of the soul. I know that there's three major different teachings on how the soul was created, and I know that the Catholic Church accepts soul creationism. Is there a reason why we accept soul creationism over traducianism?
All right. So, Nicholas, help me out here. How are you specifically defining soul creationism?
It's like that God individually creates each soul, like upon conception.
Correct.
I believe that's the proper terminology.
Right.
But
okay, yeah, we would affirm that, because not only does the church teach that God directly creates each and every individual rational soul, but it's something that can be argued by reason, given the immateriality of the soul, and given the fact that divine power would be required in order to give being to such a reality. And for a great resource that might help you out, Nicholas, is a book entitled The Immortal in You. I think it's in you. I think that's what it is.
Yeah.
The Immortal in You by Dr. Michael Orgros. It's a great book on the soul, arguing from a philosophical perspective about its immateriality, about it being able to continue to exist apart from the body, all of which entails the need for divine power in order to create the soul. And he deals with that a little bit in his book as well. So I would recommend that resource to you, Nicholas.
Okay, Nicholas?
Thank you so much.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Did you notice there was a lot of kids that called today?
Yeah.
I think kids must have a lot of why questions. Or now that you pretty much do every game show with us, maybe kids just feel comfortable with you. They're
Maybe
like,
so.
It's the game show guy. I can call him and talk to him. But that was a lot of... How many kids do you think that was today, Nick? How many kids do you think we had? Like 4 or 5? Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, Marie says 4.
Awesome.
Yeah, that's really cool.
Praise God for that.
I got to tell people again, if you're in Ohio, in the Cincinnati area, Carlo's going to be there this weekend at St. Cecilia Parish in Oakley, Ohio, March 7th, 8th, and 9th from 7 to 8 p.m. Carlo will be giving Lenten missions, so look out for Carlo in Ohio.
Looking forward to it.
And then don't forget, this is what I wanted to say. Don't forget Carlo's book, Meeting the Protestant Challenge, is on sale on top of the spring sale. More savings. Meeting the Protestant Challenge, 15% off if you put in the promo code CHALLENGE over at shop.catholic.com. When are we seeing you again? After you get back from Ohio?
I think so. I'm not sure. I have to look at the calendar, but happy
10,001.
Yeah. Episode to you.
Yeah. All right. I think Jimmy Akin's going to be here for 10,002 tomorrow because we're going to do open forum both hours. We'll see you then, God willing, right here on Catholic Answers Live.